Wouldn't that make kosher law? It's a lot more easier and more fun if we just couldn't eat pigs and we just couldn't eat shrimp.
No, yeah, I can see the joke of it.
Or we couldn't eat apples for all that matter.
Well, my whole thing is, if I may say so, that it's them. I mean, you don't want to look at it. It's the facts are them. I mean, we have to eat something. And
okay, so you are saying the fact that I can eat other animals is evidence for evolution only?
Oh, yeah, it's a step
yes?
in that direction. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to do this. How many people here think that just because animals can eat each other, evolution must be true? I'm sorry. See? that does not help. Now, there are many reasons why you could believe in evolution, but not that.
That's not how you, that's a foolish.
Absolutely. Consensus never determines truth reasonably, does it? But everyone, no one is going to be compelled to say, well, this is evidence for evolution, since animals can eat each other, because it would be true if 4 made us, for crying out loud, or if Lucky the Leprechaun did. You see, this is a transparent to the issue thing. Why are you saying it? It makes no difference to the argument in the tiniest way.
We come from the same point.
Only by that one interpretation of how we got here, yes. But by creation or evolution, animals can eat each other.
Okay, I'm trying to be kind of helpful for your argument in the same way.
You're trying to, in what way?
Well, you state that if there's a God, he made us all. Couldn't we sort out that he decided the smallest object can eat one another and then move up the evolutionary chain?
Well, yeah, God could have created things by evolution. Yeah, certainly could. But then then you need to look at things like the data I showed. You need to ask yourself some questions about the geology, and you got to decide whether the Bible's just fairy tales or not.
And in all fairness, if you believe that every word of the Bible is absolutely true and uncontroversially so, then you have to ask yourself why I personally haven't been stoned about 500 times over.
That's theology. Yeah, there's New Covenant, Old Covenant, all that sort of thing. It's Christianity.
Laws are much more written in stone than the accounts of Genesis.
As a mom, the whole point of this debate, basically, you agree that evolution is based off of assumption, presumption. All of
I
that.
would say that even if it were, that it's functional. And
It's
I can use it in the lab to do good things.
Okay. I don't debate that one bit. But the whole point of this was to prove that basically there are 2 theories out there. And only one is being taught as fact in schools. And what should happen is both should be taught in schools as theories.
Thank you. I'd like to answer that.
I think that's another topic.
My dad is a science teacher. He teaches physics and math. And so always, it's like science education has been very important to me. And the California Association of Science recently did a survey, and they found that only 59% of people knew that it took a year for the Earth to go around the sun. There are a lot of problems with making sure everybody understands the basics in science.
So therefore, let's leave the other one out and only teach your theory.
What about the short theory? Yay, short theory.
I would say that the problem comes in that there are people outside of this particular theology that don't follow that particular creation model. So if you were going to teach the young earth creationist model, then you would also need to teach Native American creation models and Hindu creation models. And so what I feel is the best is to let parents and churches teach those to kids. I was taught those when I was a kid. But then when you get into a science classroom, you have to teach the things that scientists believe, whether they're Hindu or Christian or atheist or whatever. And those are things that we all can agree on.
Actually, if the students in the classroom, if we're teaching a class and 90% of the students didn't believe in evolution, or they did believe in in biblical creation, it'd be bad educational practices to ignore the fact that this is actually what's going on in the minds of your students. The constructivist theory of math and science education, constructivism, it builds and constructs upon what the students already have. If we need to modify them or lead them to reconstruct what their frameworks are, then so be it. But discussion in class.
In a philosophy classroom, if you do that in a science classroom, then you're broaching the separation of church.
We discuss morality in science classrooms. We discuss stem cell research, cloning, and genetic engineering.
We discuss them at a very superficial level.
We discuss them at a morality and ethical level.
Controversies. So I can tell you a big controversy in evolution in my particular kind of research. So HIV mutates a whole lot, right? So all RNA viruses do that. So people who study these viruses call them quasi-species. If you want to start a big fight in an evolutionary conference, you go into any room and scream, quasi-species are real, and then just close the door and fist fights will break out. Because evolutionary biologists absolutely hate us using this word, because they're thinking we're just making up terminology because it's already covered, and it's just a large population that's really diverse, and biologists are like, no, your large populations are nothing compared to our large populations. And then you get a chemist in there because they originally had the term quasi-species, and they start freaking out. That's an inappropriate controversy to be teaching kids. Like, I didn't know what that stuff was even when I was in college. It's a very specific controversy. And then you have other controversies, like there were some fellows from the Discovery Institute that came down, I guess about a month ago, and they were saying these controversies that should be taught in class, like about junk DNA and whether there was one universal common ancestor. And unfortunately, like the controversies they were bringing up were false controversies. That's why I wanted to really clarify that junk DNA piece in my second part. And like there's ethical controversies with, say, stem cells. And that could have a portion of the classroom for discussion, and even better in an ethics or philosophy class. But the kinds of controversies I have with stem cells are whether a B cell can de-differentiate into a precursor cell and redifferentiate into a macrophage, and whether that's localized or whether it happens at a systemic level. Well,
why would that be inappropriate to discuss in class?
Children don't have that level of understanding. That's a very specific argument.
But they do know about Obama versus McCain in a government class.
It's a government class.
Yeah, I'm saying if it is something the students can understand, why is it inappropriate to talk about a controversy?
You're saying it's okay to have a small controversy. This whole debate proves this is a huge controversy.
It's in the minds of many, many
You
people.
can teach your views in our classrooms as fact when you have personally said that it's assumption and presumption. And it can be taught in our, my son was asked which came first, the chicken or the egg, in a test last year.
It
And
is
he
a
was-
supreme majority, sir. To say otherwise is disingenuous.
Always a supreme minority leads the way in any change
But
in science.
unfortunately, they were the ones who came first. We had to prove our case. And you're suggesting a vast conspiracy where the Chinese are into it, and the Russians, and the Africans, and everyone's in on this.
I'm not suggesting conspiracy at all. I'm suggesting that it is not inappropriate to discuss in a classroom anything that's controversial, that's already in the minds of the students and they're capable of comprehending.
And if you have time for that in the scientific classroom after you teach them,
Time
then it takes
for class
365
discussion?
days. Yeah. My parents are teachers. I know exactly how much time they have.
I started teaching high school in 1980, I know that. And it
Before,
will
the
take
child
longer.
Standardized testing.
It will take longer to teach a unit, but the students will learn it better. Controversy, if you were a government teacher during an election year, the discussions you could have would be fabulous. And the discussions that I had in my biology and earth science classes were wonderful during unit when I addressed origins. I've been over backwards, to be fair, about the evolution thing. My students thought I believed in evolution. I had a Catholic boy get chewed out by a Muslim girl for not believing in the Garden of Eden. And so we had some really good discussions. The students liked this. It worked great. Whenever there's something controversial, it boosts student interest. They get very interested in it.
And I say that in high schools, they need to be worried about learning the basics, the amino acids, how...
This is why kids say science is boring.
But unfortunately, you have to learn